If I could count how many connections I have from all these years of people that literally I probably have their phone number and I can text them anytime I want. I mean, it's pretty sad, Jeff. It's probably like less than a dozen. I mean, I'm talking about clients like that I would feel
Yeah.
comfortable enough to be like, hey, can we get this turned around pretty quickly, whatever the case is. But I think that's part of the problem. So it makes it much harder to have meaningful relationships. There's also another element of that too. It's that the kind of business that we're in, what I offer. I think yours might be a bit more complex. Mine, you don't really need to be in front of people to sort of explain what I have. So it's
Mm.
not like when I used to work for giant companies and we had these big giant programs that we were selling. So it makes it easier to sort of convey to them what you do in a quick email or a quick phone call. So that makes it harder. But I think one of the biggest challenges for us personally, I think you'd probably agree, is that you were saying earlier the bar set so much lower, right? So I have a business that has 2 million subscribers, but a business that reaches the same audience that has 10,000 subscribers, they have the same access to decision makers that I have because of what technology's done, and that makes it harder, right? I don't know. Maybe I don't know how that's impacted buyers at all. Meaning, like, has it made it harder for them, or is it easier for them to manage that? I don't know, but I think that's part of the problem too. That when you and I used to fly to Chicago or fly to LA or fly to New York, right? You were a big enough company. You did that. You wouldn't be a small mom and pop shop and sort of travel around the country to get face-to-face meetings. So I think that's hard too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's obviously like again, so yes, we were big enough to do that, but not big enough to have someone actually in market, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's different. But yeah, I mean, I think what we do, for you certainly you've gotten enough scale where at this point you can kind of justify. And there's my
Well,
cat.
this is like a thing on my podcast. So I just had a podcast with Noelle Spagna from Motley Fool, and the same thing happened. Her cat came right up on her lap.
Yeah,
What's the name of
yeah.
your cat? Let's not get on to, but what's the name of your cat?
Mac. Mac is the name of my
Oh,
cat, and we
all
talked
right.
about this a little bit before the show that I'm remodeling a house. So I'm living in a
Yeah.
temporary apartment. It's a little bit smaller than what I'm used to, so everyone's on top of each other. But
Yeah.
yeah, to get back to the point, like you're big enough now where you can, particularly in the men's lifestyle space, like you've got a reason to have a seat at any table for anyone who's targeting men, right?
Yeah.
Specifically, and your value proposition is very specific, which I almost think helps, right? As opposed to what we do, and we're more of an aggregator. So we'll work with like 1,000 different newsletters. So we're more of a generalist. But part of our pitch would be to those buyers, like, look, you don't have time to talk to 1,000 different people.
That's
So you
right.
can do it through me. And
Yeah.
oftentimes what will happen is they'll get outreach and they'll just sort of kick it over to us.
Yeah.
We have clients that have been clients now for years, month over month, and we've sort of become like their agency of record to a certain degree. And so they'll just sort of say, "Hey, if you want to work with us, talk to Jeff's team at Media Intercept," and that saves them time.
That's great for you too. I didn't even think of
Mhm.
that. That makes a lot of sense that you would be that sort of person. So now you're almost like a gatekeeper in a way for these
I
newsletters that are trying to reach out to them.
It's a gatekeeper. I think, like, one of the things I've learned over the years. I think we've both learned this. Like, I don't. I think that people think budget is the biggest barrier to closing a deal, and I
Hmm.
often will say that that's not really, I think, the case, especially when you're talking with larger brands or larger just enterprise customers. I think like time as a resource, is the
Yeah.
biggest barrier. So if you can go to somebody and say, look, I know you can afford this from a fiscal perspective, but you can't afford to, like, you'd rather not hire a whole nother employee to manage this, or like even
Right.
deal with like managing that person. It just becomes a time issue. So if they can just sort of farm that out to somebody who has expertise in the space while still hitting their goals, they're going to do that 10 times out of 10.